Imagine being wrong 80% of the time, and that exact failure rate is what actually makes you a millionaire. You aren't fixing games, you aren't cheating, you're meticulously, mathematically failing your way to an absolute fortune. Have you ever romanticized the idea of betting for a living? You probably picture this very specific Hollywood version of
Well,
it.
sure. The sharp suit, the sunglasses.
Right, exactly. Sipping an espresso at some sun-drenched track, nodding at the teller, and just sliding a ticket across the glass because you just knew something that nobody else did. Picking winners, cashing out, and, just living entirely on your own terms.
It is a beautiful, deeply seductive fantasy, and it is entirely disconnected from reality.
Yeah. So today we are doing a deep dive into the brutal, unglamorous, and honestly, highly complex mechanics of professional betting. We're specifically focusing on horse racing today, but the principles we're unpacking, they apply to almost any highly efficient market. Our mission is to strip away all that cinematic hype. We're going to explore why having a theoretical mathematical edge, on paper, is really only a fraction of the battle.
A tiny fraction, yeah.
Right. And why surviving this game requires a level of psychological resilience and logistical warfare that most people simply cannot fathom.
Yeah, because when you look at the fundamental mechanics of betting, the contrast between the amateur and the professional, it couldn't be starker. For the vast majority of people, casual punting is simply an entertainment expense. It's driven by the thrill of the unknown, by hope, and biologically speaking, by dopamine.
The rush.
Exactly. You put $20 down, you watch the race, and your heart rate spikes as the horses come around that final bend. But professional betting, it requires the absolute opposite neurology. It's driven by relentless discipline, extreme patience, and just the ability to operate under severe emotional strain. Honestly, if you are feeling a rush of dopamine when you place a bet, you are already losing the professional game. Dopamine is, it's your enemy.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Let's actually tear down the biggest misconception right out of the gate, which is the idea that professional betting is simply about being right or, picking the winner. It's not about being psychic. It's entirely about math and probability. When we look at how these professionals operate, they're trying to beat what is known as an efficient market. Could you break down what that efficiency actually looks like in practice?
Sure. So betting markets, especially in those final minutes before an event starts, they are extraordinarily efficient. They operate just like the global stock market. Every conceivable piece of public information, the sudden shift in wind speed, the track moisture, the jockey's recent sleep schedule, the trainer's historical strike rate, all of it is being rapidly priced into the odds by thousands of highly sophisticated algorithms and brilliant analysts who are all competing against each other.
Wow. Even the sleep schedule.
Oh, absolutely. So when a professional is looking for an edge, they aren't finding these massive, obvious errors where some dominant horse is priced as a huge underdog. They are hunting for razor-thin margins. You might evaluate a market that says a particular horse has, say, a 20% probability of winning, but your proprietary data model suggests it actually has a 22% probability.
Got it.
That invisible 2% discrepancy, that is your entire business model.
Okay, wait, I want to visualize that edge for a second. If I have a coin that's weighted slightly in my favor, say it lands on heads 51% of the time instead of 50%, I know that over 1 million flips, I am mathematically guaranteed to make a profit if I just keep betting on heads.
Exactly right.
So, my hypothesis here is pretty simple. If your underlying math is fundamentally sound and you prove you have this 2% edge on paper, the profit should just be a matter of time, right? The math dictates you win. So why is this reality described in the sources as a meat grinder?
Because you don't get to live in the long run. You have to live and, pay your rent in the short term. And the short term is entirely dictated by variance.
Variance, the natural statistical fluctuation of results. It's not just a standard losing streak, though. I think about variance like a commute. Imagine knowing a set of traffic lights is programmed to be green 60% of the time, but you still somehow hit 20 red lights in a row on your way to work.
Right.
And every single red light costs you $5,000.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it. Even if your betting strategy is mathematically flawless, variance can lead to crippling, protracted losing runs. You could be making the smartest, most plus EV or positive expected value bets in the world and still lose 30 times in a row. Now just imagine the psychological toll of that. You aren't just flipping a coin, you are executing carefully researched, high-stakes bets.
Which brings us to the actual mental torture of it all. It's one thing to know conceptually that tails can hit 20 times in a row. It is entirely another to sit alone in a dark room, watching your bank account drain for a month straight, desperately trying to convince yourself that your math isn't broken. I mean, if you're listening to this, imagine losing 3 months of your salary in a single week. You can't exactly go to your neighbor or your spouse and complain, because they'll just look at you and tell you to stop gambling.
Yeah, and that isolation is exactly what breaks people. Variance destroys weak minds. When you hit a catastrophic losing streak, the self-doubt is just agonizing. You start questioning the integrity of your models, the quality of your data, and honestly, your own sanity. But here is the ultimate trap. As a professional, you are mathematically required to keep placing the bets.
Right, because if you stop,
If you stop or if you lower your stakes out of fear, you cannot realize that long-term edge we talked about.
wow. So you're completely replacing the fun, casual thrill of gambling with sheer survival mechanics. It's like a high wire act where the wind is constantly trying to blow you off, and you have to place the next bet with zero hesitation, completely unbothered by the fact that the last 30 bets failed.
Precisely. Successful betting relies on emotional control far more than data analysis. You can possess the greatest predictive algorithm on the planet, but if you panic and reduce your stakes during a downswing, or worse, if you get angry and start chasing your losses by betting on random races where you have zero edge, your algorithm is worthless. The uncertainty of not knowing when a losing streak will end is the primary filter that washes people out of this profession.
But let's say your mental game is bulletproof.
Yeah.
Let's say you are a robot with ice in your veins, you survive the variance, you never tilt, and your math remains perfect. You still haven't made a dime, because having the mathematical edge is completely useless if the real world won't actually let you execute it.
Yeah.
Which leads us to the logistical nightmare. I'm imagining that if I have a profitable edge, the traditional bookmakers should still take my money, right? They have built-in profit margins. Don't they want the action, regardless of who it comes from?
That is perhaps the greatest illusion of the modern betting industry. Bookmakers absolutely want action, but they only want recreational action.
Just the casual punters.
Exactly. They want the casual punters betting for dopamine. They fundamentally do not want action from sharp bettors, the people who actually possess a mathematical edge. If you are successfully beating the closing price and taking value from the market, the bookmakers will actively and aggressively shut you down.
It's essentially like walking into a massive retail store and the manager realizes you only ever buy the items that have been deeply underpriced due to like a systemic tagging error, and you never touch the high margin products. Eventually, they were going to tap you on the shoulder and ask you to leave.
That's a perfect analogy. Bookmakers employ entire risk management teams dedicated solely to identifying sharp behavior. They track your device IDs, your IP addresses, your betting patterns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and even how long your cursor hovers over certain odds. The moment they flag you as a professional, they restrict your account. They might send you a message saying, "You are still welcome to bet with us, but your maximum stake is now $1.50. Or they simply close your account altogether.
That's insane.
The friction is immense. You spend half your working week analyzing the data, and the other half engaging in a cat and mouse game just trying to get your money down.
Well, if I can't just open a standard betting app on my phone without getting banned, I'd essentially have to start hiding my identity. But I know betting exchanges exist. Instead of betting against a corporate bookmaker who can just ban me, an exchange lets me bet directly against other people, and the platform just takes a tiny commission on the winnings. That seems like the obvious loophole, right? Why isn't that the perfect solution?
Betting exchanges are a fantastic tool, yeah, but they introduce a completely different barrier, which is liquidity.
Right.
Because you are trading in a peer-to-peer market, there must be someone on the exact opposite side willing to take your bet at the precise price you require.
Okay, so if nobody wants the other side.
Right. If your algorithm finds a massive mathematical edge on a rainy Tuesday afternoon race at some small, obscure track, but there is only $500 total sitting in the exchange pool for that specific race, well, you physically cannot place a $10,000 bet. The capital simply isn't there to match you.
So it's a bottleneck. You basically have a golden ticket, but the bank won't cash it. This implies that professionals have to go to extraordinary lengths just to execute their strategy. They can't just click a button. How do they actually maneuver around this?
It effectively becomes a covert operation. Professionals must spread their bets across a dizzying array of routes. They use proxy accounts, they utilize betting brokers who pool money in Asian markets, and they manage their timing with absolute perfection.
Timing is that critical.
Oh, entirely. They have to wait for the exact millisecond the exchange market develops enough liquidity, but strike before the broader market realizes the price is wrong and collapses the odds.
I'm imagining this requires some serious subterfuge. Historically, before the markets became entirely digitized, I know sharp syndicates would execute coordinated physical attacks on the market.
They absolutely did. Sharp syndicates would employ vast networks of physical runners. They would position dozens of people in different retail betting shops across the entire country. And these runners would literally be staring at synchronized watches.
Wait, really? Like a heist movie?
Just like a heist movie. At exactly 1.59 and 30 seconds, right before a race went off, they would all walk up to the counter simultaneously and place maximum limit bets. By executing the bets at the exact same second, they could get huge volume matched across the country before the bookmaker central servers realized what was happening and slashed the odds.
So it was effectively a coordinated analog attack on a digital market. That is incredible. But look at what we've established here. You have the mental torture of variance on one side and this exhausting operational warfare of restrictions, liquidity, and subterfuge on the other. This friction naturally explains a massive and somewhat paradoxical pivot in the industry. At a certain point, a brilliant analyst might just throw their hands up and say, the logistics aren't worth my sanity. So instead of betting their own money, they pivot to tipping. They start selling their advice.
Yes. Many of the most mathematically gifted minds in the space transition to the tipping model. Instead of fighting the bookmakers, they sell their edge to a wide audience via subscription services.
Let's analyze the commercial brilliance of that move. If you have a true edge and you want to extract $10,000 from a race yourself, you have to risk your own massive bankroll, endure the terrifying variance we talked about, and fight tooth and nail to bypass bookmaker restrictions. But if you pivot to tipping and you sell a $50 monthly subscription to 1,000 casual punters, well, you just generated $50,000. Zero variance, zero liquidity bottlenecks, and zero risk of getting banned.
You've perfectly captured the appeal. The tipster effectively shifts all of the variance and all of the logistical friction onto their subscribers while locking in a guaranteed risk-free income for themselves. Bookmakers do not care if 1,000 random people each bet $20 on a tip they read online. Those casual bettors will not face the restrictions that a professional would face trying to drop $20,000 in one lump sum.
But wait, if these tips are genuinely valuable, wouldn't 1,000 people placing the same bet simultaneously crash the price in the market anyway?
They often do, which highlights the inherent tension of the tipping industry. A genuine tipster might release a recommendation at 10-to-1 odds, but by the time the subscribers actually log in to place the bet, the weight of their own money has driven the price down to 6-to-1. At 6-to-1, the mathematical edge might be entirely gone.
Which creates a massive market for fakes. If the subscriber rarely gets the actual value, it becomes very easy for charlatans to just sell the illusion of an edge.
Exactly. The tipping model is so commercially attractive that it attracts countless frauds. People who simply adopt the aesthetics of a professional bettor without truly surviving the mathematical grind. They rent sports cars for Instagram, they post heavily doctored pictures of winning tickets after a race is finished, and they aggressively market a dream.
It's all smoke and mirrors.
Entirely. They don't make their money by beating the market. They make their money purely by farming subscription fees from vulnerable people, hoping for a shortcut.
It is the ultimate difference between looking smart online and actually surviving the mathematics of reality. So let's look at the rare breed who refuse to pivot. The operators who don't sell tips, who stay in the trenches, and who actually monetize their edge at the highest possible level. What does the day-to-day existence of a true elite operator actually look like? Because underneath that glamorous myth we started with, the actual labor sounds relentlessly tedious.
Tedious is putting it mildly. The daily workload is an unforgiving grind of data processing. It goes so far beyond simply looking at a horse's historical win-loss record. Elite operators are analyzing the fundamental shape and predicted pace of a race. They utilize sectional-type data thinking.
Sectional data. What does that mean in this context?
It means they break down a single race into tiny fractional increments of a second to map exactly where a horse exerts its maximum energy and where it decelerates.
So they aren't just looking at who crossed the finish line first. I imagine they're watching thousands of hours of race replays, specifically looking for the losers. Finding a horse that got boxed in on the rail by traffic, couldn't find a gap, and maybe finished sixth, the general public just sees a loser. But the professional data shows that horse possessed massive latent speed in the final furlong that it simply couldn't deploy.
Exactly. They are hunting for the hidden truth beneath the public result. And then comes the most critical, labor-intensive step. Before they ever look at what odds the bookmakers are offering, they build what the industry calls tissue prices.
Okay, explain how a tissue price actually works, mechanically.
Building a tissue price means they completely strip away the bookmaker's board. They ignore the public market entirely.
Really? They don't even look at the odds.
Not until they're done. Instead, they build their own complete probability map of the race from scratch. They run mental or algorithmic simulations based on the wind, the track bias, the jockey's weight, the pace. If their simulation runs 100 times and horse A wins 25 times, they know the true objective odds are 3-1. Only after they have meticulously constructed the true price for every single horse in the race do they finally look at the bookmaker's board. If the bookmaker is offering 5-1 on a horse they know is actually 3-1, they strike.
You are essentially building a parallel, infinitely more accurate financial market in your head every single day. When you look at elite British operators like Patrick Veitch or Tony Bloom, you realize they aren't winning on gut instinct. They didn't make their millions by whispering to horses.
Not at all. Men like Veitch and Bloom succeeded through absolute, unwavering discipline and terrifyingly efficient organization. They utilized vast proprietary databases long before the public had access to them. They had the sheer psychological courage to execute massive bets when their tissue prices dictated it, regardless of recent losses. And they perfected the logistical scale required to get millions of pounds into the market without detection. They are the ultimate benchmark of execution.
So after laying all of this bare, the variance that mentally breaks you, the bookmakers that actively hunt you down, the liquidity that dries up, the endless hours of sectional data and tissue pricing, I have to ask, if the execution is this incredibly strenuous, what makes it worth it? Why subject yourself to this?
Because for those who can genuinely conquer it, the payout is not just financial wealth. It is absolute unadulterated freedom. You have no boss. You have no clients. You operate entirely outside the normal structures of corporate society. Furthermore, for the type of mind drawn to this, there is a profound, almost intoxicating intellectual satisfaction in solving incredibly dense, constantly shifting puzzles. You are pitting your intellect against the collective intelligence of the global market, and you are extracting value from it.
To summarize the core insights of this deep dive for you listening, there's an almost unbridgeable chasm between casual punting and professional betting. Succeeding in this arena is hardly about picking winners. It's entirely about locating long-term mathematical value and then somehow surviving a gauntlet of emotional trauma and logistical friction that would thoroughly break a normal human being.
It perfectly illustrates that identifying an edge in theory is meaningless if you lack the armor to execute it in reality. But I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. We've spent this time talking about the human struggle to survive the market's variance and the bookmaker's friction. But look at the horizon. Consider the rapid evolution of artificial intelligence.
Oh, that's a great point.
We are entering an era where deep learning models will soon be able to perfectly price in every conceivable variable down to the specific biometric heart rate of the jockey and the exact soil density of the track. When the algorithms become truly perfect, does the human edge disappear entirely? Or does the nature of the game simply evolve where the only real edge left is whoever owns the fastest computer?
The ultimate battle of the algorithms. Lots to think about there. Until next time, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.